There's always the awkward bit at the beginning of Zooms where we all look at each other and wonder who's going to start speaking. My name's David Hope Jones. I'm the Chief Executive of the Scotland-Malawi Partnership. If I don't know any of you, and welcome to this morning's meeting, looking at Malawi at COP26, how we as a network, the Scotland-Malawi Partnership, will work with our friends and partners in Malawi to help amplify Malawi's voice at the COP26 Climate Conference, November 21. Numbers I'm sure will continue to filter up over the next set of 5 minutes or so, but in the interest of keeping to time, I'm keen that we're done by 12 o'clock UK time, 2 o'clock Malawi time, and keen that we have as much time for discussions as possible. I'll maybe get us started if that's okay, and I'm sure people will filter in. While I am sort of setting the scene for this morning or this afternoon, depending where you are, discussions, please do use the chat box to introduce yourself. One of the hardest things about the Zoom meetings is the sort of networking bit, but I do think chat boxes can be quite useful for that. So perhaps in the chat box, if you're able to say your organisation, if you're based in Scotland or Malawi, and any particular climate or COP involvement or expectation that you have, if that's okay. And then you're able to see other people's input into the chat boxes, and please do, through the meeting, direct message people, do the virtual equivalent of passing bits of cardboard around a table to make best use of the time, if that's okay. Just on sort of technicalities, if while we have sort of one person speaking, if other people can keep their microphones muted, if that's okay, but please, if you wish to, please do feel free to have your camera on. Many of our large meetings, we've always been paranoid that it will cause bandwidth issues for our friends in Malawi if we have cameras on, but I think actually experience has shown that's been less of an issue than we thought. So please do feel free, if you wish to have your camera on so we can see faces. If you're still in your pajamas, or just don't fancy it, if you haven't made the bed behind you, please don't feel any pressure. But if you'd like to have your video on but your microphone off, you are of course most welcome. We emailed across the sort of aims of the meeting. I hope everyone's got that okay. I'll just quickly summarize those 6 points. The first was to update on our Malawi at COP26 strategy in light of obviously COVID and the postponement of COP. Secondly, to share and build on Isabelle Rayner's research. She'll be talking in a moment about Malawi's past experience in COPs. Third, to really listen to the key leaders and stakeholders in Malawi regarding their climate priorities and how best Scottish civic society can support Malawi's involvement in COP. Fourth, to create an open space to engage our members and partners and key stakeholders and provide opportunities for collaboration. Fifth, to share existing and developing plans for COP, discussing how best to coordinate and collaborate for maximum impact. And sixth, to map stakeholders and identify who we should be working with, who's missing at the moment to deliver that strategy. By way of agenda, hopefully everyone's got it. I mean, basically you can break it into 3 main sections of time. Firstly, we're going to have a number of contributors from the Scottish side: Ben Wilson, Nick Cullen, Isabelle Rayner and Charlie Goodwin-Smith. Then a number of contributors from the Malawian side, most importantly, Chinsisi, Kazuwa, Maggie and Ngwira, Julius Ng'oma and Evans Ngwira. And then the sort of more discursive bit finally, the planning for how best to support Malawi at COP26. But there will be time for Q&A and discussions at the end of sections 1 and 2 as well. I wonder if I could do a quick screen share so we could just talk through where we got to in our last meeting with regards to the COP26 strategy. Let me see if I can get this to work. Just 1 second. Super. Can I check, Stuart? Can you nod if you can see the strategy document there? So as a group, we last met on the 7th of February. Goodness, another lifetime ago, to discuss this. At that time, we thought we had a matter of months until COP26 in November, basically now. And we agreed what I'll run through now, a set of principles and objectives of how the Scotland-Malawi partnership would work to support Malawi at COP26 using the leverage of the bilateral relationship. Obviously, since then, there has been a bit of a hiatus. Our focus as a network has predominantly been on COVID-related work, but we've got the extra time of the postponement of COP26 to be able to come back to it. So the first thing I want to do is just sort of quickly rattle through what we agreed in February. I think most of it is still relevant. And then after our speakers from Scotland and Malawi, there will be time for us to be able to come back to this document, make any edits that we want, and really to think in really tangible operational terms, what do we want to do and how do we want to do it? But hopefully you've all got this document. The main strategic objective we're working towards is to give meaningful voice and visibility to Malawi at COP26, and in so doing raise awareness of Scotland's links with Malawi, promote our members' work and support climate justice in Malawi. The principles we agreed to work by are to be member-led, to be focused on Malawi-related matters, so our sphere of influence. We, the Scotland-Malawi partnership, aren't going to be trying to do everything for everyone, but quite focused on Malawi. Be strategic and outcomes focused, obviously work within those 11 partnership principles, most importantly, ensuring active Malawian leadership, not duplicating what others are doing and supporting wider collaborative efforts, but within our means, recognizing we're quite a small secretariat within the network. And then just finally, the operational objectives. I won't go through every letter of these, but basically the first was around listening. How do we listen to all of those in Malawi that want to have their voice heard? And how do we really make sure that we're getting a range of Malawian perspectives on two things? Firstly, what does climate change really mean right now in Malawi? And secondly, what does Malawi want to come out of COP26? So the first, the most important bit is listening. The second is obviously amplifying. We want to do that principally through digital means, so collecting engaging digital content, using media and social media in innovative ways, potentially having a Malawi-specific event during COP26. I'll talk more about that in a moment. And then looking to particularly amplify youth voice. Next, to coordinate, to create space for our members to come together to connect and share information using a specific web page, supporting active collaboration, and having a brand and communications channel. We'll probably do some sort of polishing of the brand, but basically that was what we were agreeing there in the last meeting, as a digital asset that anyone that wanted to within the membership could use to help amplify Malawi. Next, to support, so really useful, tangible advice and support. Supporting with UK visas. We've got good channels into UK VI, so we can get Malawi visas secured relatively easily. If invited to do so, any formal support for the Malawi delegation. But also we were requested in the last meeting to help connect Scottish parliamentarians, both MSPs and Scottish MPs, to connect with what's happening. Next, to partner, most importantly, partnering with MASP, our sister network, but also the 2050 Climate Group, to sign up as we have to Stop Climate Chaos Scotland, to work closely with the Alliance as we always do, as well as the broader civic society COP26 Coalition. And the final point, I guess, is the sort of, anti-hypocrisy clause of making sure that we're actually doing something about it ourselves. So publishing the SNP's own climate crisis commitments and adhering to those. So I will take off screen share. And hopefully that is a useful bit of context setting. One sort of update I would give, or a couple of updates I would give since the last meeting very briefly, is shortly after the last meeting, I met with the Glasgow Lord Provost, who's one of two honorary presidents of the Scotland-Malawi partnership. He, like all of his predecessors since 2004, very passionate about Malawi and keen to offer support. He gave, obviously the world has changed since then, but he gave a sort of indicative message of support, offering the Glasgow City Chambers for an event during COP26. So really in the centre, the epicenter of COP26, for a fairly major Malawi-focused event, working with the Scotland-Malawi partnership, inviting the Malawi delegation, probably president-led, for either an evening or half-day event, looking to amplify the Malawian voice. So a very strong offer on the table of physical space within the city of Glasgow that I think is not to be sniffed at. And the second update I want to give, I want to do so by video, and that is from the president of Malawi. I want to play a short clip from a really excellent speech that newly elected President Lazarus Chakwera gave at our AGM on the 3rd of October. We didn't script this or offer any advice on this. We asked the president what are his challenges to Scotland with regards to the bilateral relationship. Craig, I wonder if you'd be kind enough to play the snippet from the president's speech with regards to climate.
I'm aware that Scotland is preparing to host the 26th UN Climate Change Conference in November of 2021. And you can count on Malawi's full participation. If I may say so in passing, perhaps the sidelines of that event offer an opportunity for us to make further progress in planning the high-level conference I have proposed. In any case, the fast approaching COP26 brings to me my third challenge to this gathering. I'm eager to hear any proposals you have on how we can ignite a movement of climate change activists amongst our peoples, the kind to capture the imagination of Malawi's youth. I believe the time has come to escalate the sense of urgency among our people regarding the threats to our indispensable relationship with nature. For that reason, I'm eager to see this partnership between us become an example to the world of two nations approaching climate change with sense of urgency and in the spirit of collaboration commensurate with the existential threat this truly is.
Graham, thank you very much, Craig. So it's a really inspiring speech. That's just a short snippet of it. He set 3 challenges to Scotland. The third was specifically around climate. So 3 things you will have heard there: to ignite a movement of climate change activists, to escalate a sense of urgency, and to use our partnership as an example to the world. So I think the bar's been set quite high for this piece of work by the president of Malawi. But what I think it's important we have no doubt in our mind is that we have a mandate and an opportunity to do something I think really quite exciting in this space, to be able to use the bilateral relationship to advance this agenda from Malawi and to really create a space to listen to our friends in Malawi. Let's move into the first section of the meeting, if I may, and our first update is from Ben Wilson. We did an online scheduler to find the most convenient date for everyone to meet, and sadly this was the best date for most people but the worst date for Ben Wilson, and he'll explain why in a moment. But he's recorded a quick pre-record for us. Ben is as I'm sure he'll say, the chair of Scotland Stop Climate Chaos Scotland's international group, which is probably one of the really key coordinating bodies in Scotland looking at COP26. Craig, could you play Ben's input, please?
Hi everyone, sorry I can't be there today. I'm not there today because it's my birthday today. Well, it's not my birthday today, but it will be my birthday on Thursday when the meeting takes place. So I've taken some time off, but thanks to David and the SMP for inviting me to do this pre-record so I can still input to this meeting. My name is Ben Wilson and I work for WaterAid in Scotland. And WaterAid is a member of Stop Climate Chaos Scotland, which is a coalition of 55 different organisations around the country who are all campaigning against climate change. So Scotland Malawi Partnership is a member, as are many other organisations you'll have heard of: WWF, Friends of the Earth, Oxfam, Christian Aid, Tear Fund, etc. And within SCCS, I convene what's called their International Working Group. And so this is the group that historically has kind of connected up Scotland with the COP, with the Conference of Parties, and through that we've worked with Scottish Government and campaigned around the COPs to connect up Scotland with what's happening internationally on climate change. So now the COP is coming to Glasgow next November. We've got a bunch of plans which really seek to kind of use the Scottish experience to try to influence the COP itself. So some of that's about saying to the Scottish Government, look, you're doing well here, and then trying to bring that message of success in Scotland to try to influence the conference and influence global action on climate change. And some of it's about saying to the Scottish Government, make these changes here, and then you'll be in a better place to kind of use those changes to be a springboard for action at the COP. So just quickly, just to give you a few sense of the things that we're working on. So for example, at the moment, we're encouraging the Scottish Government to submit what's called a nationally determined contribution. So this is a key policy thing about COP26. All the countries of the world, when they come to COP next year in Glasgow, have to bring what they're doing domestically, to bring plans, the domestic plans, which will contribute to the global effort to tackle climate change. Now, the Scottish Government doesn't need to do this because they're not an independent country, they're not, therefore, party to the United Nations framework on climate change. But we think that they've got a very good story to tell. Scotland's emissions reduction target of 75% by 2030 is one of the highest in the world. The UK government are going to publish their NDC soon. NDC, that's why it's abbreviated. And the UK's NDC is likely to be, what, 66, 68%. We're expecting something like that. The EU are probably going to go with 60, maybe 65, but much more likely 60. Scotland is a leader in this area, and we think that by packaging it up, then that leadership can be shown more effectively at the COP. But crucially, we're also saying to Scottish Government and globally, we're saying that we really, really need to remember when it comes to COP26, that action on climate change is not just about reducing emissions. Reducing emissions is really, really important, but it's too late to only rely on that. So therefore, COP26 needs to also deliver finance for the poorest countries who are suffering from climate change already, right? The climate emergency for them is not a thing of the future, it's a thing that's happening right now. So what we need to see at COP26 is huge new commitments on climate finance. And this is climate finance for two key things. Firstly, for adaptation, which is to help communities impacted by climate change to adapt to the impact of climate change. And secondly, for what's called loss and damage, which is essentially the existing impacts of climate change that people are suffering from right now, such as sea level rise or extreme weather, right? So we've seen it now. I mean, there's a super typhoon just about to hit in the Philippines. It's going to cause devastation across this country. And we know that those people there have done the least to cause this crisis, and yet they're going to suffer most from it. And that's suffering, and those impacts are very, very real, and it's the responsibility of the biggest polluting countries to take action to tackle that. So therefore, in Scotland, what we're saying is, Scottish Government, we think you should increase your Climate Justice Fund, which is Scotland's contribution to this type of finance, but crucially to then use that increase as a springboard to make some really progressive interventions at the COP to try to push forward a global agenda which provides more and more finance to support the poorest people who suffer from this crisis and yet have done nothing to cause it. So maybe just lastly, I don't want to take up too much time. I mean, those are our two kind of key priorities, I would say, at the moment for SCCS. And our priorities will be developing over the year, and I look forward to close engagement with the Scotland-Malawi partnership throughout the year to make sure that we're being really, really effective. But let me just end by saying that Scotland is not the president here of COP26, right? The presidency, the official presidency sits with UK government. It's a UK government event. But that doesn't mean that Scotland doesn't have a voice. In fact, it has a huge voice. I mean, the COP president is typically stuck in the middle. They're stuck in the middle between the big polluting nations and then the most impacted nations. And so the UK government will have to play a kind of balancing act between whose side they're on and make sure that everyone still comes to the table. And that's a very important role. But the Scottish Government doesn't have that responsibility. They don't have to play that balancing act. And we think that they should be on the right side of those debates. And that means standing shoulder to shoulder with the global south, the people who have been most impacted by this crisis. Many people in Scotland see the global south and understand their relationship with the global south via Scotland's relationship with Malawi. And so therefore, I think it's within that there's a real opportunity for what the Scotland-Malawi partnership does around COP to have a really significant impact on this conference, which is in itself one of the most significant conferences which we'll have ever seen in Scotland. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening. I will look at the recording of the whole meeting after this, and would really welcome anyone to get in touch and let's all work on this together. Thank you.
Great, good stuff. And all other contributors to this meeting are doing so live, but our thanks to Ben for recording that. And our birthday greetings to Lindsay McDonald on your 21st birthday, and an excellent point that you make in the chat box about other species as well as people suffering. And I'm sure you'll elaborate on that further. Just keeping us moving, really delighted to pass over to Nick Cullen, who's working through SCCS, that really has a really important role around the sort of COP26 Coalition coordination and the practical support. Nick, if you're with us, if you're happy to go next.
Hey, yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, and it's really nice to see all of you on this call. I'm really glad that I didn't have to record a terrifying pre-recorded message for it, and instead can just sort of throw my way through my 5 minutes. So yeah, I'm Nick. I also work for Stop Climate Chaos Scotland, but in a coordinating capacity, and I work on logistics for COP26. Which is basically everything that isn't about policy or comms, and everything that is about people and places and travel and things like that. As part of my role in COP26, I also am a coordinator for the logistics working group of the COP26 Coalition, which I'm sure many of the groups here are also a part of. It's a coalition that's slightly different from SCCS in the sense that it's UK-wide, it's much broader, and it's specifically joined together to coordinate work around COP26 amongst the UK civil society and internationally. So I kind of sit across both those coalitions, and all the logistics work that I do kind of tends to be in partnership with lots and lots of different groups. So I think the main caveat is that COVID-dependent contingent situations has a massive impact on my work, obviously, because it's all about people and places and people traveling and what COP's going to be in. But I'll leave that for now and just come back to it at the end, just give a bit of an update and a bit of an overview of the logistics work that's gone on and is going on in the two coalitions. So there's really three main areas of focus that we're working on at the moment. The first is accommodation and hosting. So assuming that without COVID contingencies, assuming that around 100,000 people turn up in Glasgow for COP at some point over the 2 weeks, it's really, really important that we first of all find a way to make sure that those people have places to sleep in what will be a freezing, rainy Glasgow November, but also more as importantly, that we engage with local Glasgow communities and really put the work in now to bring up and connect communities with the COP, so that when all those people come, it's not going to be disruptive or challenging for people in the city, but it's going to be exciting and an opportunity for people to connect with people from all over the world and have conversations and yeah, generally bridge between different movement and different communities. So the way we're going to do that is we're developing a kind of hosting platform that's kind of a sort of, in very inverted commas, like free Airbnb style hosting platform where people can connect. And we're also working with different venues, including the churches and other sort of civil venues, to have larger scale accommodation if that becomes a viable or necessary sort of outcome of travel during COP. So the second part of the work is visa support. which is something that we're going to start in earnest next year. We're very lucky across the two coalitions to have groups that are extremely experienced, either in UK immigration kind of practice, like Amnesty Scotland and some other groups. And we're also lucky to have groups that have spent many years working on getting their international partner communities visas for COP. And so the idea is we're going to resource and build a kind of in-house visa support team within the COP26 Coalition to pool the skill and resources of all the different groups to be able to support any person or community or kind of, international local community partnership that is less resourced or faces higher barriers to getting a visa for COP. And we're envisaging that this will be a really quite seriously important bit of work given the developments of Brexit and the fact that everyone just loves multiplying borders and being super racist these days. So I think the most important thing that comes through these two bits of work is the underlying ethos or the driving force behind it all is that we are working really, really hard to connect up diverse and communities across Scotland and in Glasgow, especially those that are typically left out of the climate conversation, and or different movements and different communities that are typically not involved in these kind of spaces, and then using COP as a kind of opportunity to really build bridges between the climate movement and those communities, and to connect them to people from all over the world who will be coming to COP, for example, from Malawi. So I think that the main thing is there is an amazing opportunity to connect, connect people up, which I guess I would always say that because that's my job. But where we're really focusing on, sort of less resourced communities, marginalized and communities, and building the climate movement. The sort of last major strand of work in venues is, in logistics, is space and venues. So we're coordinating, a sort of interconnected network of spaces outside of COP. So there'll be a sort of civil society hub that SCCS and the COP26 Coalition are working on, which will, sort of a ground zero place for anyone who's coming to COP that's sort of outside of the UN zones. But there'll also be all these amazing different events and art things and mobilizations and any kind of activity, civil society activity outside of COP. And we really want to connect all those spaces up and have the information centralized and really easily accessible for anyone who comes here, so that people feel orientated and people are able to find local community stuff. You just mentioned you'll be able to put an event on in the city chambers. We want to make sure that all that stuff's collected in together. So there'll be a lot of kind of mapping and information networking in order to make that happen. Because of COVID, the COVID contingencies around logistics, we're really focusing on kind of spillover benefits for all of these different bits of work. So trying to, we're working under a scenario planning done in the COP26 Coordinating Committee, which is basically everything's kind of fine. Everything is it would be everything is what it is now, so not fine, but there'll be a little bit of action and a little bit of potential for safely done outside stuff, which would be B, and then C is like whole lockdown, COP gets moved online or shifted back or something like that. So we're working from in scenario C, how is our work over the next year going to benefit Scottish society and the international groups that we want to support and platform, and movement building, which is a tough job, but it basically just comes back to connecting up groups and movement building and things like that. We'll also be running, sorry, I forgot like one major bit of logistics, which would be volunteers. So obviously, if in scenario A, if there is large mobilizations and the People's Summit and all these different events happening outside COP, will demand a massive amount of volunteers. And we're hoping to, we're looking to use that as an opportunity to bring groups and communities into COP that are sort of outside of the usual suspects of the activists and NGOs. So we're already working with the Learning Disabilities Group and Scottish Refugee Council to build plans for sort of supported volunteering projects for the COP itself. And then those links can mean that we can bring those groups and things they care about into the climate space. So last thing, two things from SCCS and COP26 Coalition is that the COP26 Coalition's global gathering is happening over Ghost COP, which is what I'm now calling it. And it's going to be really, really amazing. And I would really, sorry, I'm just trying to find the link, recommend that everyone signs up and goes to it, because it's going to be a really amazing event. And lastly, through SCCS, we've been working on this kind of climate fringe, which is an events platform, which is kind of using to gain enthusiasm and momentum and reach new audiences in the run up to COP. So there are loads of great events on there, and it's a really good space to break down the kind of walls, the silos between the different areas of our movements. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Awesome, Nick, thank you so much. That was absolutely brilliant. Lots of information there. What we will do, Nick, if as we have our next speakers, if you can put URLs into the chat box, and then we'll make sure that on the post-event page that captures all of the sort of videos and info here, that we're signposting to those pages. Really key point I want to give is the Scotland Live Partnership does not want to and will not duplicate any of the fantastic work that Ben and Nick have talked about across Stop Climate Chaos, Scotland and the UK-wide COP26 Coalition. So we're working closely with them. And what we're looking for is what is the value add that SMP can give. So I'm going to turn to our next speaker, who's Isabelle Rayner. We at SMP quite often get people contacting us, say, hey, I want to do this piece of research here, a master's, an undergrad, a PhD. And one of the great frustrations sometimes is that then you don't hear back from them afterwards, and this research is done. And I was talking to Joyce, who I can see on the call, about this last week. You know, frustration in Malawi that an ever-lending list of Zungus turning up and asking the same questions So the really critical thing that we set, the challenge that we set all of our members and partners is when you've done the research, share it, use it, feed it in. And I've got to say all credit to Isabelle. I think she's doing that better than anyone else we've worked with. So delighted to pass over to Isabelle Rayner, who's going to tell us about her research on COP's past experience in Malawi before, and I'm keen to emphasize this, then passing to the Malawian side to hear directly about their experience as well. But Isabelle, over to you.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everyone. So my dissertation examined the effectiveness of COPs in amplifying voices from Malawi. So my research was rooted in interviews with Malawian members of government, delegates, and civil society, as well as COP technical advisors and civil society representatives in the UK. And ultimately, I identified several major challenges faced by Malawi at COPs. Firstly, the differences in size and capacity of national delegations is a key factor determining which voices are amplified. At COPs, there are usually numerous meetings occurring simultaneously on different, very specific aspects of negotiations. To have a representative in each room, countries must bring large delegations of negotiators who are well versed in the diverse and intricate details of climate governance. Several interviewees who attended COPs confirmed that Malawi is not represented in each negotiation room due to its delegation size. In comparison, many Global North delegations have the financial resources to bring dozens of negotiators to spread between the rooms. Interviewees added that Global North negotiators can afford to meet multiple times before each COP to perfect their demands and negotiation strategies, which many Global South nations cannot afford to do. The second challenge I identified was the bloc negotiation format at COPs. All nations belong to bloc groups. For example, Malawi is a member of the Least Developed Countries bloc and the Africa group. In these groups, Malawi's delegation can introduce a demand, get other nations to support the idea, and approach negotiations as a powerful collective of many nations, increasing chances of amplification. However, blocs containing Global North delegations have the same advantages I previously described. Larger delegations, the ability to strategize with other nations in their bloc before COP, and so on. Ultimately, the underlying challenge at COPs is geopolitics. The most influential blocs and nations are those with existing geopolitical dominance. My dissertation concluded that COP is a microcosm of the world. The geopolitics of our global systems are magnified within COP venues, leading to the disproportionate amplification of Global North voices over Global South demands for climate justice. For example, at COP15 in 2009 in Copenhagen, 102 Global South countries called for a 1.5 degree global temperature rise target. Yet the final Copenhagen Accord contained a 2-degree goal and no legally binding mitigation target. Several key negotiators from the Global South described the accord as a suicide pact designed by a few Global North countries in order to maintain their economic dominance. Indeed, COP15 negotiations were described as untransparent and undemocratic by many attendees, since leaders of major geopolitical powers dominated negotiations and many voices were excluded. Therefore, in order to combat the geopolitical dynamics which will always permeate COP negotiations, my dissertation concluded with recommendations. This included the need for funding to support the following: the attendance of more delegates from the Global South, continual negotiations training for delegations, and pre-COP meetings so Global South delegations can prepare. My dissertation also recommended that more COPs be hosted in the Global South or in the Global North with the Global South COP presidency. For example, Fiji hosted COP23 in Germany. So this brings me on to COP26, which, although hosted by the UK, provides opportunity for Scotland to share its platform with Malawi. Of particular relevance to the attendees here today, I recommend that Scottish organisations share the civil society space at COP26, collaborating with Malawian organisations to create exciting, engaging side events which draw media attention and highlight Malawi's central demands. As COP26 approaches, the key will be regular online communication and preparation, just as we are doing here today. Our interconnected world faces an unprecedented global emergency. A collaborative international approach is vital. COPs provide an opportunity to organise our approach and prepare our strategy. You can read my dissertation on the Scotland-Malawi Partnership website. I'll post a link to the webpage in the chat in a moment. Thank you for listening.
Isabelle, that's brilliant. Thanks ever so much. And while you were talking, I put in the chat box the link to the full research. I don't immediately have hand the link to the really useful one-page summary that Isabelle did, but we will get that to everyone. Now, the last speaker in the sort of Scottish input section is from the Scottish Government. It's Charlie Goodwin-Smith. Charlie is the Climate Justice Fund Manager. I'm keen to emphasise, really good of Charlie to be involved in today's call. He's not the COP lead for the Scottish Government. In fairness, I should emphasise that Tessa, who has a more direct role on COP, wasn't able to make this date, but Charlie really kindly is going to say a little bit about the climate justice work and maybe just touch on COP, but that isn't the main focus of his work. Charlie, over to you.
Thanks, David, and hi everyone. Thank you for the introduction. I suppose it's been really fascinating actually to hear from the speakers so far. I mean, in 4 days' time, we, in better circumstances, would be welcoming the world to Glasgow and starting off COP, which isn't really possible at the moment. The climate emergency, however, as we all know, hasn't gone away. It's central to our kind of conception of recovery in the Scottish Government, and that our green recovery really underlines the importance of fairness and justice. Maybe a way to think about COP being a year later is not a delay in action on climate change, but perhaps an opportunity. It's an extra year to pull together really the best of what we're doing in Scotland to kind of showcase at COP26 next year. Scotland, as Ben Wilson mentioned, is a world leader. We've set ambitious new targets in the Climate Change Act last year, embedding climate justice in that act as well. And we're committed to an inclusive and successful summit next year, engaging global partners, emphasising collaboration. I mean, this is an important summit. It would have been an important summit had it happened this year too, because it would have been 5 years since Paris 2015, which would have been like a nice milestone. But nonetheless, we can build that momentum and keep it going for next year. It's crucial that the inclusive and successful summit, as previous speakers have said, includes representatives from the global south countries like Malawi. Our themes for COP are just transition and people, and that really reflects kind of our drive towards inclusivity as a major pillar of what we see as a successful COP coming up. Obviously, climate change is a global threat. It requires global action, and we remain committed to working together to address the kind of great global challenges we face. Our goal is for Glasgow in 2021 to be a milestone in the world's transition to a net zero future. For that to happen, states and regions have got to work together just as nations and the COP presidency has to as well. Scotland was recently appointed the European co-chair of the Under2 Coalition, which is a group of more than 220 governments representing 1.3 billion people and 43% of the global economy. I mean, this is really indicative of our collaborative approach to international issues, and in the role that we have, we're going to work with our coalition partners to pursue and develop kind of the green recovery agenda going forward. In climate justice, we've recommitted to that in the programme for government in 2020 to 2021. I mean, our World First Climate Justice Fund will continue to support communities in our partner countries of Malawi, Zambia and Rwanda, and help them become more resilient to climate change. The powerful work that we've done so far will inform how best we support our climate justice initiatives after 2021. As a strong believer in international cooperation, Scotland's made clear our commitment to tackling the global climate emergency. In response to the Paris Agreement, we set some of the most ambitious decarbonisation targets of any industrialised country, as Ben said earlier. 75% emissions reductions by 2030 and net zero by 2045. We've also set just transition at the heart of our decarbonisation work to ensure this transition benefits everyone and to ensure that no one is left behind. We're supporting communities in developing countries adapt to an already changing climate. So we are ready to host COP26 in Glasgow, and to ensure that it helps raise the global ambition, increase action and set the world on a trajectory to reach net zero by mid-century in a way that is fair and just for everyone. To reach this goal, we We want to push for greater global ambition on climate by demonstrating our leadership and offering our innovation and expertise. We want to promote our commitment to a just and fair transition. We want to ensure an inclusive and open process where everyone is engaged and represented. And we also have to support the partnerships we need to deliver kind of the global change. And these are partnerships that cross international boundaries, as the Scotland-Malawi partnership is ably demonstrating. So part of what I want to do here is listen and to bounce it back to you. We'd like to hear about the plans that you've got about involving Malawi at COP26 and how we can work to support you to by being here, it means that I can bring this information back to the Scottish Government and I can keep this dialogue open. A couple of points that may be of interest, just that I noted down while previous speakers were talking, was to do with, Nick, you mentioned to do with engaging people who might not normally be engaged with COP. And on the 26th of October, the Glasgow Science Centre launched first set of activities in relation to their Our World, Our Impact. So we supported that with some funding. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, and I'm happy to post the link in the chat. With regard to getting Isabelle, you mentioned about getting delegations to COP26, and that's quite important to us as well. We've provided some funding to the Women's Environment Development Organisation to support female delegates from developing countries to attend conferences, and we've also provided some funding to the Climate Group's Futures Fund initiative to help emerging economic regions to engage and participate in climate issues. So. Just noting the time and keeping an eye on it. That's kind of an indicator of some of the things that we're doing. But I think really what I want to underline is that I would like to be able to take back kind of an understanding of how we can help to support Malawi be represented at COP and to ensure that it's a really inclusive and productive COP26. Thanks, David. It's back to you.
Fantastic, Charlie. Thanks ever so much. We're a little bit behind time, and we're about to turn over to listening to the Malawian side, which of course is the most important side if we're about listening and amplifying. Before we do, any quick questions to any of our Scottish speakers so far? So that's myself, Ben, Nick, Isabelle, or Charlie. The easiest way of doing it is if you just turn on your video, if you can, and give a wave, or if you can't do that, just write something in the chat box, and I'll try and keep skimming across the two. It won't be your last chance to ask something, and much of the second half of this meeting will be around discussions and open impact. Open discussions. I'm just checking. I can't see any frantic gesticulations or waving, so I'm going to move us on through to the Malawian side. And I'm keen that we start with MASP, our sister network, but specifically the work that they're doing with the 2050 group funded by the Scottish Government. So can I pass over to Chinsisi Kazuwa, who is the project officer within MASP of the Malawi Young Leaders Climate Change Project. Chinsisi, over to you.
Sorry, David, I had my hand up.
Ah, Joyce, I'm so sorry. Your video is off, but we always welcome a question. Joyce, over to you first.
Yeah. So I can't put my video on. I'm not feeling very great. So my question is to Charlie. I always come back to this point about the diaspora involvement, because in the community, I've got other people who are studying, climate change or such, energy and relevant fields. How can the diaspora be involved in what you're doing? Thanks.
It's a really important question, and I think the way that diaspora organisations like your own can be involved in going forward is that we have a real opportunity here in that the original Climate Justice Fund work was committed between 2012 and 2021, and the work that we're doing at the moment is on what kind of that support for climate justice is going to look like, and we want the work that we've done previously to inform that, but we also want that work to be current, and that work to be informed with what people need and want now. So in that case, I'd probably say something like watch this space. We've got we're trying to formulate how best our climate justice fund should be shaped, and based on conversations that we've had, and that I've listened to contributions previously from your attendance at international development events, I'm very, very much aware of the need to engage with diaspora organisations in Scotland. So thank you for your question, and it's just to kind of watch this space at the moment, and we'll keep you in the loop.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Joyce, for the question. Keen to emphasise diaspora, not just engagement, but leadership is key and central to everything the SMP does. Joyce and I have been having some really good conversations across the last couple of weeks or so about how we do more and better work in that space of mainstreaming AMS and the wider diaspora community within what the SMP does. And we're keen as a network to commit to amplifying Malawian voices, whether they're resident in Scotland or across in Malawi. So Joyce, your point is well made, and will remain at the heart of what we're doing. If no other questions, and apologies again, Joyce, that I didn't see your waving, and sorry that you're feeling under the weather. Let me turn over to Chinsisi in the long way. Chinsisi, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for that. I'll only have my video on for now, just to say a quick hello. My connection is very unstable, so I can't keep it on. I apologize for that. So the Malawi Young Leaders Climate Change Project is a skills development project that is jointly implemented by the Malawi-Scotland Partnership and the 2050 Climate Group. The project aims at equipping young Malawians with knowledge and skills necessary to take a leading role in tackling issues of climate change at personal, community, and national level. The project further empowers young Malawians to be confident, capable leaders who are prepared to influence policy, engage their communities, and develop initiatives that will create long-lasting change towards a sustainable future for Malawi. As you might know, Malawi, the majority of the population is young people. So you can only understand how crucial and how instrumental young people are when it comes to taking lead in things, especially in climate action. The project is a 3-year project. It started in September 2018, and it's scheduled to end in March 2021. It targets young people aged 18 to 35, and we currently have 45 young leaders who are students and young professionals in different fields. And it's made up of 23 males and 22 females across the 3 regions of Malawi. So the young leaders are recruited through an open recruitment process, and in year 1 and year 2, we received a combined 3,000 applications, which is encouraging for us because it reflects and shows the interest that is there in young people when it comes to climate change and climate action. And as a voluntary role, it just shows the commitment that young people are willing to do it, are willing to work for their country and for their community on a voluntary basis, which I think is very encouraging. So in the program, young leaders go through introductory training. So these include introduction to climate change, because we recruit even young people who are curious about climate change, who are interested in it, those who have been in it for a while, but also those who are willing to learn. So we go through introductory trainings and workshops, as well as introduction to the project, climate change communications, advocacy, community engagement, proposal development, waste management, personal development. It's also a personal development program, so it helps them to also grow and to expand on their skills. We also do demand-driven skills training workshops, and we also do regional engagement meetings, so young people can connect with like-minded young people and organizations in their regions. Further to that, young people, the young leaders are required to participate in the development, implementation, and reporting of personal plans, as well as the regional plans. So every young leader is supposed to do something in their community, whether big or small. For us, as long as you're doing something, it's the initiative that matters, and whatever small, what other people consider small is actually a big contribution to climate change and climate action. And at the end of the year, starting from this year, we issued out end of year certificates, and I'm excited to announce that the certificates were endorsed by the Environmental Affairs Department, as well as the National Youth Council of Malawi, which was very big and exciting for us to get that recognition. And also for the young leaders, it was very encouraging because it celebrated the work that they're doing and to show that it's being recognized and celebrated. So some of the activities that the young people have done in the 2 years have included tree planting, numerous cleanup campaigns, waste management campaigns, advocacy around the thin plastics ban, and just alternative sources of energy, especially in relation to clean energy. And we've had also young people develop and work towards developing a mechanism that better promotes the use of biogas, and also the development of eco-bricks and research around that. Climate change awareness, radio and TV programs. And we're excited to hear that one of our young leaders has been working on plantable notepads. So these are made from recycled materials, and they can also be planted. So if you plant the paper, it's going to grow into a tree, which is pretty amazing. And we also have a peer-to-peer program that connects young leaders in Scotland and young leaders in Malawi to facilitate co-learning around climate change, but as well as our cultures as well. And we've also had culture exchange visits, which have been instrumental in first-hand experience of what the climate change situation is in Scotland, but also experience the culture. And in relation to what the president said, it's been encouraging for us now to have a president who is in the lead and who has been very vocal about climate change. And in his speech, the one we just played earlier, but I'm going to say that again because it relates to what I was going to say. He said, "I am eager to hear any proposals you have on how we can ignite a movement of climate change activists among our people, the kind to capture imagination of Malawian youth." And then he goes on to say the rest. But for me personally, and for the project, and for both of the implementing organizations, it was very encouraging to hear, because he was basically calling for this movement, but we've already been part of it, and we've already been in the lead of developing climate change activists who've been doing so much. And we're very eager to highlight the work that these young people have been doing, because we believe that young people are the greatest resource to the fight against climate change, and are instrumental in initiating and just leading the activities. So we're very happy.
Today, and
and we're very happy to know that the president is also front and center, encouraging young people to take action, and not only in the speech at the annual general meeting, but also the speech he made currently around climate change and the environmental initiatives that he wants to take on. So this has been very exciting for us, and we're definitely looking for ways that we can work with him and also show him what we're doing. And also, yes, in relation to COP, we definitely are wanting to bring out our voice as young people to COP. And I believe that the contributions that the young people in the projects have made, and also the impact that they have done, is worthy to be displayed and to be made visible, especially on the international scene and platform. Thank you.
Fantastic, Chinsisi, thank you so much. It is a fantastic project. It's great that Scottish Government's continued that funding for another year, and I completely agree, Chinsisi, with what the President said. There's a real opportunity to build on it. Sarah Knight, who's one of your partners in Scotland, has flagged that one of your Malawi Youth Volunteers Ambassadors recently spoke at an FCDO event with Minister for Africa James Duddridge. So there's great opportunities there. We have three more speakers from the Malawian side. I'm keen to turn to Maggie Ngwira next, who is the National Coordinator of the Climate Challenge Programme in Malawi, CCPM. Maggie, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much. I made a little bit of a presentation, so I'm going to share my screen. Great to see that I have, I'm going to talk about the program that work closely with Charlie, person on the line to make a presentation, but also that the Chinsisi tackled the things that I also wanted to talk about, the political will that is coming from the President. But yeah, so I'm going to talk about, in short, that the climate scene in Malawi, but also relating that to the climate change program that we're working with that's funded by the Scottish Government. So I'm going to start with a quote. I think my internet is not as good. Okay. Let me just work this. sorry, let me just work this. Are you able to see my screen though?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so so sorry.
Maggie, we can see your screen.
Okay. Am I? Oh, sorry.
I think just go ahead if you're happy.
I'm just gonna ask. Okay, fine. So I was going to start with a quote, which is going to contextualize the involvement, the climate change involvement in Malawi. So this is a quote from one of our participants who were interviewed during one of our work. So he says, back then, the rainy season was from October and we would plant our seeds in November or December, but now it has changed. It rains less. Sometimes it rains in January and it stops in March, and the rains in December and February. So that is a lived experience of the climate change situation in Malawi. How people could understand climate change is through the weather conditions. They would look at the two things, the four things I would say. So look at drought, issues of floods, or issues of strong winds, or hailstorms as well. So we've had experiences or episodes of the manifestations of climate change in the different from the different, see that these things are in areas. So for example, I think in 2015, the number of disaster-prone areas was increased from, I think, is it 18 by 4 more districts. So this is illustrating where the climate change scene is like in Malawi. But then there's some work that is being done. So I'm going to cite the political landscape. So we have the policies and the frameworks So, for example, we have the climate change management policy, the DRM policy. We have the national resilience strategy right now, and the environment management policy. We have the forestry policy. All those things are in place, and there's a lot of players. So you have the INGOs, the government itself, the local community-based organization. There's a lot of players and doing a lot of interventions around climate change management. But the challenge, I think, the issue that right now is the implementation of those policies or the of framework, which the main challenge that's there is the financing. I'm sure Julius is going to talk about it because he's well versed in that field. So the financing to implement now those policies or the frameworks that have been put in place. So in this understanding, what we are doing at Tropra and supported by the Scottish government is that we're implementing what is called the Climate Change Program Malawi, which is a community-led resilience building program. So we're implementing it hand in hand with the local partners, but also with support from SCCS, Scottish Catholic International Aid Fund. In this program, what we realize is that the communities are at the front that should be at the center of the interventions that we're bringing in climate change management, because they are the ones at the center of the problem. So they understand the problems better, and they should understand the solutions better that would help solve the climate change challenges. And therefore, they also lead the interventions. So in this program, we understand that no one should be left behind. So in the development of the program, in the designing of the program, but also in the implementation of the program, we work together with the communities. And we work around the elements that are very fragile to climate change. So in the food protection, in the access to water, in the energy scene, but also in the income generation, because these areas are also sometimes the contributors to climate change. If you look at the situation in Malawi, for example, with deforestation to make charcoal, or clearing land to grow food. So we work on these areas because we understand that these are the very cause, but also they are the contributors to climate change, but also the areas where you would make the interventions better. So I'm going to show you some of the activities that are being done in the different aspects of the program. So the food, water, and energy aspect. So these interventions are community driven. The communities came up with these interventions or developed these interventions themselves, for example, in food production, but also to ensure that there's food security, but also to ensure that there's income generation activity. So we have irrigations powered by solar, but also we have a backyard garden so that the communities are able to generate food for their households, but also even to generate an income. And then you also have water, which is a challenge. So you have, which are context specific. You have some communities where you need a borehole, you need to drill in your borehole, or you need to rehabilitate already existing boreholes, or you need a community where they need to have a rope and water pump because they have saline water. So you need an intervention that provides fresh water. And then you also have activities where we're income generating activities, but also these are alternative income generating sources, but also these are hand in hand environment conservation activities. So for example, like beehives, the apiculture, where you're conserving the environment, but also you're generating an income. So all these are community driven solutions to climate change. But also apart from community driven solutions to climate change, we'll also look at climate literacy, which also fits into what Chinsisi just mentioned, talked about earlier on, where we're working with the young people in universities. So working with the 2 universities in the country, where we make sure that they are in the forefront of disease awareness among themselves, but also in the communities that we work in, with the understanding in the issue of climate justice, understanding that some communities in the blunt of climate change, even though they are the least contributors to it. But also now speaking to the COP is where we're bringing the voices of the people that are in the front of climate change, bring them to the platform where their voices can be heard in the policies, but in the interventions, but also in the international discussion. So apart from that, what we also need is the last one, that what our president just mentioned in his address on the environment management work that his administration is taking on. It's very good that now we have sort of like a political will, where there's not just the things written on paper, but also we have support from the government who are ensuring that we have financing the activities, but also not just looking at the response, but also making sure that we have the resilience building for the people, that they are not predisposed when there's manifestation of climate change, which is exactly what the work that we are doing. So we're happy that we are already working in that resilience building, and the president is coming in to say that we have to work on resilience building rather than just responding to disasters or occurrences. So trying to bring everything together in 5 minutes. Yeah, that is I would say is the scene of climate change in Malawi, but also the work that we are doing under the Climate Change Program Malawi. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, Maggie. That's absolutely super. Thank you very much. You've got through so much and made best use of your 5 times. That's been really rich to listen to, and well done coping with the tech challenges. I recognise what's also been said on the chat box, that we need to recognise and respect the fact that the connectivity, bandwidth, and the costs of those in Malawi is not equal to Scotland, and that needs to be at the centre of our thoughts and planning at a practical level. But thank you very much indeed. I want to turn now to Julius Ng'oma, who many of us will know. He's really, like Maggie, at the centre of this space in Malawi as the coordinator of the Civil Society Network for Climate Change in Malawi. He's been leading the network since 2014 and also serving as a focal point for the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, the PACJA in Malawi. He's also critical for this conversation, be part of the government of Malawi's COP delegations since 2014. So Julius, if you can hear us and you're able to take over to you.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. Sorry, you'll not be able to see me because today's internet is actually misbehaving. So I know if I put up my video, then I think we'll not be able to understand each other. So, but thank you for inviting me and for giving me the space to just talk briefly about what could be the COP26, expectations, if I may say, from the civil society, but I can also, in one or the other, maybe talk about, in passing, I'll also be talking about what maybe we have to expect even from the Malawi government to actually, take out of the COP26, building on what the experiences that we've had for the last, a couple of years where we've been interacting with the COP conferences. So thank you, Maggie, for putting me on the spot, because my first point was going to be on the climate finance as something that as a country we really need to have in terms of addressing the challenges that we are facing as a result of climate change. Malawi has always been in the forefront over the last couple of years to demand governments or COP to ensure that countries in the global south are actually supported with scaled up finance, which should be easily accessible and even predictable when it comes to managing the impacts of climate change. So this has always been a core for government of Malawi, and this has also always been a core for civil society organizations in Malawi, including those in Africa and the global south, because we realize that there's always a mix-up in terms of discussion around climate finance, where some resources are not able, they are not really scaled, and there are also, the ways of how these resources are being, being reported as climate finance has always been in a way that it confuses a lot of, countries. So we really need to find ourselves in a space where we are actually having a conversation and also receiving finance. Colleagues, can you hear me?
Yep, we lost you just for a moment, but you're back with us.
All right, thank you so much. So I was just talking about finance, and I'll move from that point because I think what we want is just mobilization of finance that should be science-based and on the needs and priorities of developing countries when we're actually coming up with the numbers and also maybe supporting our initiatives in the country. The second point is on the adaptation. Maggie and others have also elaborated on how we are affected by the impacts of climate change, and the potential is there for us to adapt, but there are so many challenges for us to meet our own adaptation in many aspects. So the point also dwells on actually support towards adaptation initiatives. We know most of the the funding has always been, for example, if you look at the funding mechanisms that are there under the UNFCCC have solely focused or mostly focused on the mitigation side, but we feel like a country like Malawi needs to have allocations for climate finance towards adaptation, and also these resources should be mostly from the public sources and grant-based. It's not very easy for you to have private finance which is grant-based, which is actually the case that we're actually experiencing in Malawi. Most of the projects that would want to support adaptation are always finding themselves leaning backwards because they say there's no profit in that. But we need that kind of support to come to Malawi and actually maybe assist us to do our adaptation and move towards resilience. So we also need support towards agriculture, the implementation of agricultural activities with a view of achieving food security and increase agricultural productivity in the face of climate change. There's always been a hold or a debate or some kind of disjointed conversations around agriculture at the COPs because of the different point of views that our colleagues have in the global north. Mentioning mainly focusing on the aspect that agriculture is also one of the contributors to global greenhouse gases. But what we are saying is that we still need support towards agriculture activities, support that will actually benefit our food security system, but also ensuring that we are meeting our targets in terms of reducing the emissions. So agriculture that is sustainable in a way that is the one that we actually need for us to be supported. And finally, I'll only talk about the loss and damage that comes as a result of climate change. We need actually support towards addressing losses and damages that are incurred due to climate change impacts. Over the last years, we can talk and even give good examples of what we've been experiencing as Malawi in terms of the disasters and the losses that are coming from that, including other countries in the global south. There are so many cases where countries are losing a lot because of the impacts of climate change. So we need that kind of support. I can report here that I think in the last at COP25, our focus was mainly for countries to agree that there has to be a financial mechanism to support loss and damage, which did not, of course, materialize well at COP25. And this is our expectation that as we go to COP26, maybe Scotland can be a leader in terms of joining other countries that are calling for this support, a separate mechanism to support loss and damage financially, not to be, for us to be actually mingling the finances with other elements. But there are also other areas, for example, the technology transfer issues, the capacity building issues, gender and climate change. These are all our part and parcel of our cause for the next COP, but they have also been a part of our cause for the last, COPs, COP25 and below. We need technology transfer support. We need capacity building. As I already mentioned, we can always be talking about adaptation. Where is the support? We might not only talk about the financing, but we also need the technical capabilities for us to jump into the next level of attaining resilience. So I think I can just stop there for now, because I know on the program, you also indicated that there's going to be from government Evans, who can also elaborate on some of the areas that the government of Malawi is also expecting in the next COP. Thank you so much, colleagues.
Julius, thank you very much. That was all very clear and compelling, extremely useful, and I'm sure others have questions for you as I do. As Julius said, we're due in the agenda to hear from Evans Ngwira, who is the Chief Environmental Officer in the Government of Malawi, the head of the Climate Change Policy section, and as I understand it, really a very key individual in the government of Malawi's COP negotiation team. Now, I know Evans has been having connectivity issues, as a number of our friends in Malawi have. I cannot see Evans on the call, but I just want to be silent for 30 seconds in case he is with us under a different name. Evans Ngwira, are you on the call? Okay, nothing heard. If Evans, you are there and you're not able to say anything, do jump in and interrupt at the moment. We very much value your contribution. It looks as if there is a technological problem there. I know he said that he was having issues earlier on today. I will work with Evans to get either a written or a video update to all the attendees here. I know he's very keen to take part in these conversations. Before I open it out further, I'm keen to ask anyone that has any questions to our three previous Malawian speakers, Chinsisi, Kazuwa, Maggie Ngwira, and Julius Ng'oma. I wonder if I might take chair's privilege to ask two very quick questions to Julius. The first is, there have been some noises about Malawi potentially being the head of the LDC's bloc at COP. Is that right? And if so, can you tell us more about it? And secondly, I was really interested in all of what you were talking about, Malawi's priorities for COP26. Is that written down anywhere? Is there sort of an authoritative document from your network that we can use and amplify? Julius.
Thank you for the question. I think I will take the first one, the second one first. We actually are in the process of coming up with our position as a civil society for the next COP. So I think anytime that we actually done this process, we are going to share with you the documents. But we can also share our previous work in terms of what were some of the issues that we're focusing on, the outcomes, for example, the report for the outcomes for the last, the COP25, and also any other discussions we've had with partners, either in Malawi or even at African level when it comes to Conference of Parties after the COP25. So secondly, on the head of LDCs, this yet to be confirmed but I know there are discussions that Malawi could be leading that group, and I think it's up to the Ministry of Forestry and Natural Resources and the government of Malawi to actually finally agree on such kind of arrangement, because it has to be now an endorsement from government that yes, we can take the leadership. Thank you.
Julius, thank you very much. Any other questions? Please either just jump in or turn your video on and gesticulate any questions at this stage for Chinsisi, Maggie, or Julius. Okay, I can't see any questions just now, but really the rest of the meeting is all open discussion. So please do contribute. Sorry, go ahead to Wange, and then we're going to have Joyce's comment in the chat box.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Tuange. I'm calling from Wesem. I wanted to, it's a general comment, I guess, but also a question maybe to Chinsisi's presentation, seeing that she's working with young people. I think one of the main concerns that I have, and I don't know much about the agenda for COP26, but it's about the role of young people with regards to issues to do with biodiversity. For example, even if we speak about agriculture, I feel there isn't much focus being talked about, let's say, the impact that climate change has on the issues of pollinators and what that would do with our crops that depend on pollination. And you know, for young people, I would love to hear from Chinsisi if within your the network of those that have just graduated, did we have anybody who was championing biodiversity in its fullest respect in terms of other tasks and not just tree planting? Because I know we do a lot of tree planting, but do we have anybody that is championing everything else, pollinators, birds, mammals, bats, everything? Is there somebody like that? And if not, is there a way that we can encourage someone in this program? And then also just for maybe any other comments, is there this conversation at COP26 that has to do with regards to this impact of climate change on other biodiversity issues? Thank you.
Tuange, thank you very much. Before passing to any of those three speakers, Chinsisi, Maggie or Julius, to pick up that, can I also amplify Joyce Pirry's question in the chat box, asking whether the government of Malawi has had any direct involvement and support in your work so far. So two questions: government of Malawi's direct and financial support of projects in Malawi, of community-led projects in Malawi, and secondly, Tuange's question around biodiversity, who's doing what, or is there more we should be doing? Chinsisi, Maggie or Julius, if anyone wants to come in.
I can come in first.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to take the last part of the question that was raised by Joyce, I think on the biodiversity, whether the focus or the COP has always also been on the biodiversity. I think that's what I got from her. So I think there are always also other conference of parties under the CBD, which are organized either annually or sometimes in a 2 years period to discuss issues to do with biodiversity under the Convention for Biological Diversity. So I think you can also check with the Environmental Affairs Department. There's a focal person for CBD who also coordinates issues to do with conference of parties on the issues to do with biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julius. And Tuange, if you're not already in contact with Julius, please contact us and we'll do an electronic introduction. I think one of the other Malawian speakers wanted to come in as well.
So when it comes to biodiversity, I don't think there's been a lot of young people who've been actively involved in that. But I do know that there were some cases in the back where they've worked with young people who they've worked with other organizations that dealt with the fish, especially like marine and water, is that water animals? Sorry, marine creatures, fish and things like that. But it's only been, it hasn't been like a direct involvement in the sense that it's them initiating that, but they have worked on such projects before. But yes, I do agree that there is need to also sort of branch out and realize how climate change also involves like the broader spectrum and not just the limited way, the sort of limited ways that we deal with it here in the sense of tree planting and like cleanups, but like it'll be also interesting, yes, and very encouraging if we encourage young leaders this year to also look at the animals, the birds, and your recommendation. And I'd love to talk a bit more about it with you if you have any ideas, so feel free to contact me.
Thanks, Chinsisi. And anything on Joyce's question about Government of Malawi's direct involvement so far? I know you said that the certificates were endorsed by government and you are excited about the opportunities of the President's word. Anything else you want to add into that, Chinsisi?
As for the government involvement, there hasn't been much outside of sort of us how can I put it, updating them on how it's going. But actually, no, there has been. They have been part of our steering committee, and they've been part of the partners that we've been working with a lot on that. So in that sense, there has been an involvement. And although we would be interested to look at and to sort of develop more of an involvement other than what we have now. And sometimes it's been due to conflicting schedules and whatnot, but they have been open to working with us and joining us on stuff.
Absolutely. The only thing I would add to that is to echo your points earlier on from Chinsisi, that the framing of the President's words of he would be really interested in proposals coming to him about how we can, use this partnership to inspire the world in this space. I think there's a real opportunity there. I think the ball's in our court as a network to go back to the OPC and say, look, here's our 3-point plan. This is what we want to do together. So I do think there's a real opportunity, a real mandate. Maggie, I don't know if you wanted to come back on either of those questions, Government of Malawi engagement and biodiversity.
Yeah, so not for us, from our end, not necessarily with working with the youth per se, but with the approach that we are using in the program, especially in food production and environmental management. So in food production, we use the approach of agroecology, which recognizes the understanding that we need to protect the environment. So not bringing in any external or foreign inputs into the environment, in the sense that, in that sense, we're ensuring that we protect the system, the biosystem that we are operating in, but also in our environmental management, we're particularly looking at regeneration. So instead of bringing in new seedlings or seeds from elsewhere, we ensure that we're protecting we're preserving the environment, that it regenerates in itself. And with integrating beekeeping in there, we're ensuring that we ensure that the environment is able to regenerate itself, and the diversity is more enhanced in that sense. So I would say that that's a work that we're doing, not necessarily with the youth that we're working in, but as an approach that we've embedded in the program as a whole. So probably that's something that we can work with, see how we can, I don't know if that's what Tuwange was asking about, but that's something that would be critical in biodiversity as well.
No, that's very useful. Thank you, Maggie, and thank you to all of our speakers in both Scotland and Malawi. We've got 26 minutes left in the call. I'm really keen that we use that time to look at the sort of tangible next steps of what do you want us, the Scotland-Malawi partnership with our sister network in Malawi, the Malawi-Scotland partnership, to be really doing between now and November 21 and COP26 to make sure that we have really delivered on that strategy. My first question is an open space. If there's anyone else that has any burning bits that they want to share before we talk about those tangible next steps, any really quick sort of one minute updates that you really want to flag and you think are relevant to Malawi's involvement in COP26 and the delivery of that strategy. If anyone wants to either put it in the chat box, put your videos on and wave, or just start talking.
Yes.
I can't see your name. Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sorry, I'm Dominic Nyasuru from National Youth Network on Climate Change. Yeah, I just wanted to share something on the issues to do with biodiversity as far as youth inclusion is concerned. So that's true that currently there is no any tangible youth engagement into the area. As Julius said, that we have 2 sets of COPs. Government, I think, have managed to engage the youth in Conference of Parties, UNFCCC, CCC. But then in terms of engaging the youth in CBD has been a bit of a challenge. I've been one of the youth who have participated in the National Steering Committee for the Biodiversity. So what we are doing now is that we have developed a mentorship program that are looking at both instruments, the UNFCCC and also the biodiversity one. So we have engaged the focal point who is leading us into a training where we are training those young girls, because our focus is on young girls. So currently we have managed to conduct 3 training looking at biological diversity aspect, the youth contribution towards the development of the CBD. What is being done as a way forward? So after collecting or training all these youth, we'll be able now to come up with a network specifically focusing on biodiversity, so that they can amplify the youth voice as regards to issues to do with biodiversity. So I think by this year, we might, or early next year, we might be also launching the National Youth Biodiversity Network, just to making sure that youth are included in these processes. Thank you.
Dominic, thank you very much. That was extremely useful to know, and please do keep us informed. If you should have our email, my email address. If you keep sending information to me, that would be really useful, and we'll disseminate it to the group. That does sound directly relevant. As I said, I want to steer the conversation into the sort of tangible next steps. What I will do, if I may, is do another quick screen share, just so we can get back to the strategy document. I'll try and have it like this, spread over 2 pages. Hopefully you've been emailed it, so you can open it on a different screen if you prefer. But this is what we started the meeting by saying that we wanted to do. I've heard a couple of things that I think we should add to this document from what's been said. I think Joyce's point about the central role of the diaspora is really important. And I would suggest that Principle 4, which is work within our Scotland-Malawi 11 partnership principles, ensuring active Malawi leadership, I suggest that we extend that to say both Malawians resident in Malawi and the diaspora community who have an exceptionally important role to play. And the second suggestion I would make an amendment here is to objective 1, listen, which we'll look more about, dive into in a moment. But I think to recognise the point that I think Lindsay made, and we've seen it again and again, that digital can be a great opportunity in many ways, but is not an equal opportunity in Scotland and Malawi. Recognising, respecting the challenges if we're using digital to listen to partners in Malawi around connectivity, bandwidth, and the costs of them. So I'd add a clause in there. Can I throw it open, and please just unmute and jump in if there are other changes and edits that you think we should make to this as what you want the Scotland-Malawi partnership to be doing on COP26, and then we're going to talk about how we do it. So quick comments on any big changes that you think that should be made to this strategy. Obviously, we need to update it to recognise that the COP's happening in 2021. Throwing it open, please just unmute, or if you prefer not to, put it in the chat box. Any changes or edits that you think should be made to this document. What I will do is I'll leave that question open, and at any point as we're discussing in the last 20 minutes, you can jump in and answer to that question, because I appreciate people will be digesting, they'll be reading and reflecting. So at any time in the next 20 minutes, please jump in and say, hey, look, we've missed this principle, or actually, do you think we're right about this? But let me steer the conversation into the sort of how we do this. There are 6 operational objectives, and I wonder if we could just sort of go through these briefly each and think about how we as a network are gonna do this. So the first is around listening, and obviously we spent much of our 2 hours today doing that, creating space to listen to both sides about who's doing what. Can I ask an open question? And again, please, either in the chat box or just unmute and jump in. Any thoughts or ideas, inspiration, expectations around how the Scotland-Malawi partnership should be listening to a diverse range of views, particularly at the Malawian side?
Come again with the question, David.
So Julius, thanks. It was how do you think we should be doing the listening in Scotland? So we've got 12 months until COP. We want to be amplifying, which is what we're going to talk about next, but we need to be doing the listening first, listening to the views in Malawi about what is the impact of climate change in Malawi and what does Malawi want to come out of COP26. I think at one point from me listening to you, Julius, is clearly working with your network, waiting for your update of collated views in civic society, as well as those from the government of Malawi, is a key structural way that we can listen to a range of views. I don't know, Julius, if you want to add anything in there about how do we in Scotland listen to those views in Malawi?
All right, I don't know, but I was sharing a week ago with another platform on how best we want to make sure that we are preparing, because I think the question is about how do we get prepared for November 2021, and how do we how do we make sure that we have a good strategy for that? So apart from having these general kind of conversations, I think there has to be a deliberate effort to make sure that we localize the Talanoa dialogues, if I may put it. The way we want to get information from different stakeholders and at different levels and in different groups, because once I think, as you rightly heard from the presentations from my colleagues, I think we are talking about differentiated impacts. We can talk about adaptation, but we don't know how different groups would want to adapt to the impacts of climate change based on how they are actually affected by the impacts of climate change. Because even when we want to get to the decision table, you still need to, at COPs, you still need to hear the different groups on how they are differentiated, how they're affected in a way. I remember all the COPs that I've been attending, you still have different groups of people there raising their voices on different issues. So indigenous people, the young people, the civil society, and all those people, we need actually some kind of deliberate way where we can have differentiated, conversations with different people. So we can have a series of these conversations via Zoom, or we can organize, physical meetings in Malawi, for example, because some of those are actually possible, because our case of corona is somehow different from other countries. So we can try to do those structured dialogues, get the views, and have a more consolidated kind of a conversation where we can hear from different perspectives, and then in our journey to consolidating the different positions that we can have as Malawi and Scotland. Thank you.
Julius, that was extremely useful. Thank you very much, and I completely agree. Open space for structured dialogue, both by Zoom and physical meetings, to listen to the Malawian side. Any other views on this question of how do we listen well between now and November 21 to views in Malawi. And Joyce, I'd extend that as well to voices in the Malawian diaspora resident in Scotland.
Yes, can I come in?
Please do.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to concur with Julius. I think youth inclusion is very, very critical. I understand that as youth, we have been participating into these high-level platforms, but I think if you look at the demographics, the young people are in majority. So perhaps what we have been lacking is the youth platform to generate their own, issues, whether it's on regarding adaptation, whether it's climate financing. So I think that will form basis on how we can amplify the youth voice, so that while we are looking at amplifying the youth, the voice at COP, and we can also influence such at the local level, because these are the same issues that we want to push. So I'm of the view that we need to change the approach in terms of how we engage the youth. So the youth need to be given their own platform so that they can deliberate and come up with their issues that they want to push.
Okay, thank you very much, Dominic. I think very good points on listening to young people. I wonder if I can move us to the second sort of operational objective of Amplify. And again, what we're looking to come out of this with is tangible next steps. What do you want the Scotland-Malawi partnership to do in the next, say, 6 to 8 weeks to move us forward?
Sorry, David. I think just an addition on the structured dialogues. We have strand meetings like at the Malawi Scotland partnership here. I think this can be utilized. For example, the renewable energy strand, we can look at the climate change perspectives from the energy angle. We see how we can amplify the forces from those angles. Pictures, videos of the impact of climate change to the Malawian communities in terms of the energy poverty. I think this could be something that could paint a very good picture. At the same time, I think as MASC, we usually have our symposiums and some annual general meetings where almost all of us come together. I suppose if the different standing committees can look at the climate change perspectives from their angles, and then at particular annual general meeting, we perhaps have one comprehensive presentation that encompasses all of that, and then people comment into it, we can end up coming up with some very tangible steps and the comprehensive documents that can be presented. Thank you.
Edgar, fantastic, very, very useful. Thank you very much. So using those MASP structures, the strand meetings, the symposium, to be able to listen to MASP members as well. Really good point. Edgar is with Community Energy Malawi, if anyone doesn't know him. Very good points, and we'll add that in, Edgar. Moving on to the second objective around amplifying. I don't know whether either Louisa or Chinsisi want to say anything about some of the ideas about sort of snappy youth videos. Louisa or Chinsisi, do you want to say something on that?
Sure, I can come in there. We're in the very early stages of brainstorming an idea to amplify 26 youth voices across Scotland and Malawi. So that would be 12 in each country, probably from the 2050 climate groups. And this works quite well to reflect COP26, 26 voices. And essentially, if we get going soon, that means releasing 2 videos per month, 1 Scottish, 1 Malawian, hopefully. So the idea is that it's just going to be short, snappy videos and a chance for one young person in each country to share what they're doing already as being a climate leader, a young climate leader, and also thinking about calls to action for other young people and what other young people can do in the build up to that. So working closely with MASP as far as possible just now to come up with a really good idea for that plan. If anyone has ideas that they'd like to feed into it, please also do let me know. I can post my email just in the chat box here, so do connect if you'd like. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions on that just now as well. Thank you.
Good. Thanks very much, Louisa. I don't know whether Chinsisi you wanted to add anything to that at all, or anyone else at colleagues at MASP.
Nothing to add. I think Louisa did a good job of explaining it and just capturing the vision. I hope everybody else got what we're trying to do, but if they did, if they did not, I mean, we're open for questions and for more clarifications.
Can I come in, David?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. I'm thinking in terms of how do we promote the activities on the ground, promote them here. I mean, on the ground, I mean, in Scotland, because I heard from Chinsisi's presentation as well as Maggie's presentation that there's a lot of income generating activities that are happening there. My worry is that aid is not going to go the way we think aid is going to go. So we'll see a reduction in funding as years goes by. So we should be concentrating on how do we promote the products that are being produced through the involvement of the youth on the Scottish market. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Joyce, and welcome any colleagues, friends in my point around sort of transition from sort of aid to trade, and whether there's we can use the audience and platform that we have in Scotland to build sort of markets and interest for that. If anyone wants to come back on that, particularly at the Malawian side. Nothing heard, but do feel free to jump in to that point at any point later on. Just sticking with the Amplify objective. So if everyone is happy with that, we would take that as a unit of work that the SMP would support. The production aim to produce 26 pairs of videos of young people talking for sort of a minute or so each, potentially sort of bleeding them out once a fortnight to take us through over the next 12 months to try and keep this agenda, keep this on the agenda. As Louisa had said, there's still work to be done, most importantly listening to the Malawian side about how exactly that would be done. But if people are happy with that, that would be a key, I suppose, deliverable action point for us in this area. Also within the Amplify strand, there is a Malawi-specific event/activity during COP26. So an activity for an action for us in the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks is to go back to the Law Provost of Glasgow and to sort of cement that offer of space for either an evening or half-day event, specifically to support Amplify, give a platform to the Malawian delegation, as well as raise awareness of the Scotland-Malawi links that are there. For all the reasons that have been outlined by Nick and others, we don't know what actually it's going to look like, COP26 is going to look like from a COVID point of view. So I don't think it's worth having too much pre-planning. But if we take as an action that we would look to cement that offer and invite everyone in the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks to input your views of how we should be using that space, as well as obviously the views from the Malawi delegation of the government of Malawi. Those are two tangible actions that we can do on Amplify. Can I throw it open? Anything else? Any thoughts, input, concerns about what's proposed there, the youth videos and securing space for a Malawi event during COP, and any other things that you want us to be doing in the Amplify space?
Can I just come in to say that it would also be great, I think, taking into what Edgar said, that as individual partner organizations, it would be good that we are also able to document the communities that we're working in. So the context, the interventions that we're doing, and the changes that are there, our programs are bringing forth. So I think that would feed into the some of the evidence or some of the things that you would be able to show at the Amplify desk or something like that. So it will be good that we as stakeholders taking upon ourselves to document, to capture the context that we're in.
Absolutely, Maggie, and that segues us nicely into the next objective as well, which is the coordinate one. I wonder if I could come back to you, Maggie, with a question. what would be most useful from us as a network to help build the audience for you to be able to share your message? You know, how would you want to share it? Is it through sort of video or other digital content? How would you want to share it, and what would be most useful for us to do as a network to build an audience and platform for that sharing?
I think one, it would be, because I'm sure that a lot of us as organizations, we're already documenting, we're already taking videos, we're already capturing pictures, but then they end up staying maybe just in reports or in our laptops and stuff like that. But it would be good if we can. I'm not sure if there's already a website developed particularly in preparation for the event. So say, for example, Malawi at COP26, I think that will be a good website so that we can showcase the different work that is happening in Malawi. Either you would have, say, a radio program or a podcast. I don't know, I'm just thinking around of the things that we can do to bring the voices of the people that are at the ground, the people that are working, the people that are affected by climate change, the people that want change as regards to how we're treating climate change. So I'm thinking website, social media, radio program, a podcast, or something like that. Yeah.
Fantastic ideas, and these are well within our gift as a network to do. Can I throw it open, that question of... Go ahead, Julius.
Yeah. Apart from treating this as an advocacy space, can we treat it as also a lobbying space? As we go towards COP26, I'm saying this because I think in some instances we might want, to, if we craft messages, we agree on a position. One way of actually trying to get our messages straight to the Conference of Parties to also link up the individuals, for example, in Malawi, with the negotiators in the UK, or even the members of parliament for UK, those that are going to be, well present in the spaces for negotiation, because they will need to start listening to what we have, listening to what points we have, so that they can also well represent us. At some point, we can also get this as a link up between the Malawi government delegation, key officials, with those in the UK, so that at least we are already doing our lobbying as we go to November 26th. Thank you.
Julius, a really good point. I mean, looking back at our 6 objectives, noticeable by its absence is influence. And this was actually a point that Ben Wilson emailed and who's keen to feed in as well. It's really important. We're not just using COP26 as a way of sort of cheerleading and celebrating the friendship between the 2 countries, but really looking to influence. I completely agree, and I think we should add it in. We will do so. I suppose, if I'm completely honest, one of the things that slightly scared me about that when I first wrote this document at the beginning of this calendar year was a sense of not really knowing how we, as a relatively small charity in Scotland, could and should influence the agenda. But I think the critical thing is aiming to influence, but working through and with other people like yourselves, Julius. So I think absolutely, let's add that as a 7th objective of influencing and making clear that that's working through your channels, Julius, and others to amplify that voice. Any other points people want to add on that influence point?
Can I add to that?
Please go ahead, Lindsay.
It looks from Isabelle's research that that's the key thing, that what Malawi needs to actually get its voice heard at COP is it's not just these fringe events, but it's actually supporting the government of Malawi, both in its numbers to be at the conference and to take part, but also in capacity building and in negotiations in its 2 blocks, in the LDC and the Africa blocks, because I think that's what Isabelle's research said, that their influence was lesser because they didn't have that capacity to do all the pre-planning and pre-meeting, so they could go to COP saying, this is our agenda and this is what we want. Now, I know that's probably not a role for an NGO like the Scotland-Malawi Partnership, but actually to make sure that the Scottish Government, and through them the UK Government, hears that, and the Malawi Government, so that there is that sort of preparation done. I don't know, did that make sense?
Absolutely did. And I'm keen to say, you know, we don't need to be too nervous about it. I'm very happy for the Scotland-Malawi Partnership to be as political as we like in this space. As long as we're representing Malawi's interests, we can do it. I mean, I've spoken to Alistair Jack, the Secretary of State for Scotland. I'm sure we could get the ear of Alex Sharma, who's you know, coordinating COP. Edgar Bayani, I can see you nodding furiously. I'm keen to pass to
That's
you.
great. I made my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Edgar, did you want to add in on that point?
Well, I think she's just nailed it home. The previous COPs, it has been more of talk. Julius here has been participating since 2014, but I think there hasn't been any change. So the point that she has just raised to me really sort of like gives us that impetus to say we have to take it up to make sure that at least this time around we get the results. Every year we shouldn't be just complaining that, you know, financing mechanisms are skewed towards, you know, already advanced countries. They are not advantaging us as Malawians and all that. I think we need to have a robust agenda and then utilize Scotland's influence to bring the other people on the table. Of course, I don't know how it will turn out in America, but the geopolitics also matters in this thing. Let's suppose perhaps Biden comes in, probably it might even be a good opportunity for us to bring them in. Anyway, I'm not talking about the US, but I'm just saying it might work to our advantage. Thank you.
Edgar, very good points. I'm amazed it took 2 hours for someone to mention the Malawi election. I was going to, Edgar, be provocative and ask if that was a make Malawi great again hat that you had on there. But no, very good points. I want to ensure that Maggie's good point is not lost of I paraphrase here, Maggie, but sort of build it and that they will come. That a lot of the stakeholders here have digital assets, that if there was a good space to be able to share that and a reliable audience, that actually people would you know, that it would be forthcoming, the videos, the sound, the blogs, the images. Can I just check with other people that that's the case? If we did that as a network, created a digital space, you know, a web page or website specifically for this, do other people have digital assets that they would be able to share? Because the anxiety sometimes that you build it and then you'll also have to be sort of developing the content and it won't be as sort of diverse and heterogeneous as you hoped. Do other people have digital content or would develop digital content if there was a really good platform to share it?
I think for Community Energy Malawi, we have got a communications person. There is a communications officer within CM who usually accompanies us and gets all this digital content and put it together. So that's also another opportunity that we can utilize.
Great, thank you. With an eye to the time, we will finish in sort of 6 or 7 minutes, if that's okay. That'll be 10 minutes late, but I'm just keen to finish working through here. So we've got some really tangible points. I wanted to also ask about the support one, and I know Nick, who's had to leave the call, is doing good work coordinating some of the other countries' visa work. I'm keen to emphasize, you know, we the Scotland-Malawi Partnership have a unique relationship with UKVI for 12 years of having Scottish MPs shout at immigration ministers in both the Lords and the Commons means that we have really good channels to get visas. If you have people coming from Malawi, please let us know early and we can help. But my question here is, what other practical support, advice or information, really practical terms, could we be doing to support Malawi delegation as they come across in November of next year? And I would put diaspora, connecting up, working with Joyce to connect with the diaspora community in Scotland. But any other ideas on practical support that the SMP should offer?
David.
Please go ahead, Julius.
Sorry to come in again. You know, no matter what we can do, digital, no digital, we still need to engage on the table. That's the most important point. And as my colleague Eric has said, it's all about geopolitics. And then when you get your points on the table and whatever you have, you still need to be very constructive and know what you're doing. And one thing is that although we are excited about maybe November 21, and actually the whole program starts way before that. So we have the SBI sessions, we have the SABSA sessions. These are critical sessions where all the negotiation text is actually being drafted, and these are texts and conclusions, draft conclusions that goes into the main COP, which is at the end of the year. So one way of trying to prepare is to ensure that if we have to have a very good delegation, then we have to also make sure that these people are supported to actually be part and parcel of those technical sessions where draft text is going to be generated, conclusions are going to be generated, positions are going to be turned into a COP conclusions that will be agreed upon at the end of the year. So I think if there's going to be any support, I would actually also request that if there could be very prominent people that have been following negotiations, or any other people that still that can assist in inputting into those negotiations, they need to be supported to attend and be part and parcel of these technical sessions before the COP. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Julius. Absolutely. I think it's crucial that we as a community understand the process and timescales pre-COP. And it would be easy for us in Scotland to see this as just the Glasgow November 21. And I think you make that point very well, Julius, that our support needs to be through the process. And perhaps, Julius, if you and I and any others that want to join can have a conversation offline about understanding that process, the timescales, and what supports them in Scotland would be most useful. I'm very keen to do that and would amplify what you and others tell us would be useful. I wonder, probably two last quick questions I want to throw out, and I'll put them together and people can jump up and answer either of them. But the two questions are, firstly, when should we next meet? How often is it useful for us to meet? As a network, as a working group, and secondly, who is missing today? Who is missing from this group? Now, I know an obvious one there is the government of Malawi itself, and I know Evan's really wanted to, and he will be in the future, I'm sure. But two questions: when should we next meet? What's useful for us to advance this agenda? I think we do have a sense of what we're going to be doing. I'll summarize it in a second. But when should we next meet? And secondly, who should we make sure is with us? Who's not in the tent now and needs to be in the tent? If I could throw those two questions open. Well, should I give a proposal, a starter? Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Can I start?
Please go ahead, Julius.
Can I start? Yeah. One on who is missing. Let's not only focus on the maybe the lead negotiator for who is Evans in the Environmental Affairs Department. We should be focusing on all the 5 key negotiators. They need to be part and parcel of this process. So we need to have people from the Department of Forestry, Stella Gama. We need to have people from the Land Resources Department. We need to have people from the Ministry of Department of Energy, those that have been following COP, so that they can also be part and parcel of this process. Secondly, I think we are also missing the private sector here. I think there are several discussions that have been leading towards private sector, especially on the mitigation side, where issues to do with renewable energy and other energy related stuff are also discussed. So these people could also be brought into the limelight. We're also missing the key media people here. I know prominent journalists who have been with us, for example, and COPs, James Yavula, Matthews Malata, and others. So I think we can also try and do our best in terms of getting those involved. Thank you.
Julius, that's really, really useful. So the government of Malawi not to rely on one person, the private sector and the media in Malawi, and we will work together, Julius, and mapping those stakeholder database to be able to get them on board. I really do think the sort of the axis, the Scotland-Malawi axis, that friendship, the story of friendship, has a real opportunity to be picked up to a global audience as far as making COP sort of relevant and meaningful at a sort of very human level. Any other views on either when we should next meet or who is missing from the tent at the moment?
I think the academia are missing. Sorry, the academia.
Great point, Edgar. And I think Joyce wants to jump in as well.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it's you could invite the Scottish Youth Parliament representatives, because I know they deal with climate change.
Great idea, Joyce, absolutely. And possible the 2050 group in Scotland has some useful ways in there, but if not, I'll do that directly. Any other views of who's missing at the moment or when most useful for us to meet? Okay, well, let me begin to.
I think when to meet, today we've made very well on the 5th of November. Perhaps if we can make it as a monthly, you know, catch up on the first week of that month, just like we've done today, it can really work to our advantage. And I think in between can give us ample time to generate a lot of other information, other steps that we need, and we shall best we move.
I think that's an excellent suggestion, Edgar, and if no objections, let's do that. And what we can do is if we find, I mean, today was a big one because there's a lot of updates. We hadn't met since February, but some meetings might be quite short, some meetings a little bit longer, unless there's any other objections to the idea of us meeting on the first week of each month. Great, let's do that. Respectful of your time, let me just give a very quick sort of 1-minute summary of some of the key points that I'm taking away from the discussions that we've had. I think we've heard from I think 6 or so really good speakers sharing what they're doing in both Scotland and Malawi, and my very sincere thanks to all who have been able to do that. I think we've sort of endorsed, we've agreed that the strategy is still relevant that we agreed in February, but we've made some important additions to it and also some practical next steps. We've highlighted, I'm keen to amplify Joyce's point around active diaspora engagement. I'm keen to include Linda's point around equitable digital access. And that's a challenge that we SMP will take very seriously. So when we next meet at the beginning of December, we will have an answer to what practically can we do to better support those in Malawi to take part. If COVID restrictions continue to ease in Malawi, it's relatively easy because we could support MASP to use their communication and resource centers to be able to have an open space that people could come in and join, so not having to use their own airtime. I think the youth videos will be a key area of work in the next 4 weeks, and Chinsisi and Louisa will be working on them. We will look seriously at what Maggie had suggested around creating a platform for wider digital content, and we'll come back with an answer at the beginning of December on that, having of course worked with SCCS and the other networks to ensure we're not duplicating what others are doing. We will add influence as the 7th objective to that strategy, led by Julius's very useful input in that regard, and Isabelle's analysis of the geopolitics that I think we all agree with, and gives us a clear, I suppose, mission statement of what we want to try and avoid for COP26. On support, we want to ensure that is not just focused on support in November 21, but in really all of the really key procedural points between now and then, as the agenda is made and that Malawi is heard throughout. And in expanding the stakeholder list, we will make sure we have cast the net wider in the Government of Malawi negotiation team. We will engage the private sector, the media, academia, and we'll also reach out to the Scottish Youth Parliament. I think all of that gives a really clear steer from the membership to us as your network of what you want us to do over the next coming months. I think we will do our best in the next 4 weeks to have a crack at that. And within the next week, we'll set a date and time for our next meeting, which, as Edgar suggests, will be in the first week of December. Thank you very much, everyone. We're a little bit over time. I know it's not easy trying to have these discussions by Zoom. I think it's been really productive. I think we've done the listening well. Can I just give a final AOB piece for any other business? If anyone's not been heard or wants to make a burning point before we go, please, now is the time. Well, friends, I haven't heard anything. So just once again, thank you very much. We will post a video of this meeting, including all of the chat box text. We've got notes. We'll be aiming to get that all out in the next week or so. So thank you very much, one and all. Have a very good day. Thanks then. Bye for now.